The Sinai Medical Foundation Oral History Project is being conducted by the Leonard N. Simons Jewish Community Archives. My name is Michael Burke, and today's date is December 1st, 2023. I am interviewing Dr. Eduardo Phillips. Dr. Phillips, do you give permission to the Leonard N. Simons Jewish Community Archives to publish, duplicate, or otherwise use this recording for educational purposes or for use as deemed appropriate by the archives?
I do.
So let's start at the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in the country of Mexico, city of Guadalajara, and October 25, 1943. Why I was born there? Because my parents emigrated from Europe to Mexico.
Where were they living in Europe?
Dad was from Czechoslovakia. He came to Mexico to visit one of his older brothers that was already established in Guadalajara in 1939. So the war erupted and he couldn't go back. There were 4 boys, 4 girls. Only 3 boys and 1 girl survived. Parents and relatives were all eliminated. My mother came from Kiev, a little town small next to Kiev. And they came out very early. My mom came to Mexico when she was 5 years old. And by lottery, the family could leave Russia and Ukraine and come to Mexico. They met in Mexico and they got married there, so therefore Guadalajara it is. Population of Jewish people were very small, and my dad wants us to have a better Jewish life. So we moved to Mexico City, and then on I started my schooling there.
How old were you when you left Guadalajara?
About 11 years old.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you went to school in Guadalajara, so what kind of school did you go to there?
That was the elementary school. That was the Catholic school. It was the best school in the city, and I had really no big problems. No, I didn't feel any anti-Semitism until we got to the point in the catechism where it says that the Jews killed Christ. And everybody turned around to look at me. It was an unpleasant moment, but nothing at all. And from then on, we moved to Mexico City, and I started.
How long did you live there?
Until I left in 1969. So I lived in Mexico City. I went to high school. I went to preparatory school, and then to medical school. University of Mexico, National University.
When did you decide to become a doctor?
Yeah,
Why?
It was one of those things that I didn't have to think hard or search hard. I think my fascination with medicine started when I was, 5 or so. That doctors made house calls at that time, and when somebody in the house was sick, my mom or dad would call the doctor would come in, and here comes this expected special person with this black little case, and with skill would examine you and would tell you the diagnosis, you write a prescription, and then you got better. So he was like a very special man, not because of the power that he had, but what he represented, that he healed people. Then, as I went on in school, we started dissecting frogs, and I was fascinated by it. Then, on my own, I bought frogs and I dissected them and I labeled it. When I started medical school, there was a rotation. I had an uncle that was a thoracic surgeon, and he was the kindest, effective person that I knew then. And he was one of my inspirations to become a doctor and become a surgeon.
So describe your experience in medical school.
Medical school was very exciting. The initiation was they would shave your hair. They would shave your head, and then you know that you were in first year medical school. And many people ran and avoided it. I went to it. I wanted to show that I was in medical school. I was so proud of that. It was difficult. It was hard studying, and it was a learning the hardships of medicine at a very early stage. On the other hand, I met wonderful people. I made wonderful friends that we still are ongoing today.
That's good. That's important.
Yes.
But your residency, you made a decision, I think, to do your residency someplace other than in Mexico. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Why did you make that decision?
I did an undergrad internship and a postgrad internship, and the level of training I was not satisfied with. I had several friends that had come to the States, and I started looking at that avenue. After graduating from medical school, we got married, my wife and I, in 1968.
How'd you meet?
Oh, very interesting. In medical school, it's what's called a university city. It has all the faculty buildings throughout the terrain. It's gorgeous with Diego Rivera murals outside. And in the faculty of literature, many American girls would go there in the summer to take courses. So we would go to that building to try to pick up American girls. My friend and I went there, and lo and behold, my dear wife is there, my future wife, and my friend knew her. So he introduced us. And we started talking, and I don't know, there was a connection there. And Marion said, I always wanted to, I'm going to go home. I'm going to take the bus. And I said, no, let me take you. Let me drive you home. So in the drive home, she says, I always was interested in looking at being present at a delivery. You say, I am volunteering at the Red Cross, and I take a 12-hour shift. And sometimes people come and deliver, never thinking that they're going to let her come, because I just met her. They don't know me from Adam. So I said, if you want to come, I'll call you when I'm ready to go, and you tell me. So I call her, and to my surprise, she says, yeah, it's okay, I'm coming. She said, now what do I do? So I picked her up. We went to the hospital. And this is like an emergency room, like receiving hospital. So there were people with lacerations in the scalp, and the face, and the leg. I gave her a white gown, and a patient was drunk and said, doctor, pulling her gown, cut my leg off. She turned white. That was an experience. So I started taking care of people. I gave her gloves, hold the head while I sewed the laceration. So that was our experience, the first date. And from then on, we saw each other almost every day for 4 years until I graduated from medical school. I got married.
Great story.
Oh,
You sure know how to show a girl a good time.
right.
So describe your residency.
My residency was, I came in as an intern in October. October was off the calendar year, but I had to take an exam to be able to work and learn in the States. And for that, we went to Miami. We took a course for that purpose, and it ended up, when I got the result, was September, October. So we did not know anybody in Miami. And Marion, we had a 3-month-old boy. She was alone. I would go to the hospital every day for the course, and she was very unhappy. So the only other person in the country that we knew was a cousin of mine that was doing child psychiatry training here at Hawthorne Center and Lafayette Clinic. So I called him and said, what's in the air in general surgery? He says, Sinai has an excellent program. And he knew a thoracic surgeon that was a friend of his father that I talked about before. And I called and they got me an interview. I came in and they gave me the job right away because I had experience already. So we decided after talking about it, yes, we're coming here. So we came in October, and I started as an intern in the hospital. In internal medicine and rotating internship, so I was not interested in that. So I did it because it was exciting, it was a new place, but in January, they made me a resident in surgery. That was one of the happiest days in my life. I was going to do what I loved to do for the rest of my life, and that's what I felt. And it was like a new world opened up. So I started my residency. We were very, very busy in the department. We were 5 residents, and we took care of everything. So we worked very hard. We worked 36 hours, we rested 12, and we were in an operating room all day. Doesn't matter what kind of cases would come in, I would take care of it, of course, with the attending surgeon. So the experience, the volume of work, the experience that we had, not only in disease exposure, but the surgeons, to the different surgeons, everybody offered something different. Not everybody was wonderful, the best, excited, but everybody had something special. The caring, the dedication, the respect for the patient, those things, they might be innate in you, but when you see it palpable, active, every day, say, yeah, I want to be like that. I want to have that quality. So that was one of the highlights of Sinai Hospital.
What was the atmosphere like at the hospital?
The atmosphere was very, very, if I put it in 2 ways, very collegiate in one way, very in-depth science, knowledge, and in the other side, friendly, camaraderie. One of my first feelings about Sinai is I came from a 95 to 99% Catholic country, and all of a sudden here, everybody was Jewish. It was like a candy land for me. I was so impressed with that. And, doctors would invite us for the holidays, and we were in Pesach, and we read the Haggadah, and wow. So that was an incredible gift for us, for me and my family. The rest was hard work. We worked very hard. We were taken care of very well, as far as, don't overdo this. But the teaching was every day, every second. And you would take a little part of this doctor and a different area, a different technique from this other doctor. I would scrub in 3 hernias with 3 different surgeons. And each one of them did it a little bit different. You find what makes sense to you, and that's what you take. And it's accumulation of that knowledge until you can do it on your own, adding your own touches.
So surgery was the bottom line, what you wanted to do right from the get-go.
No, never had any doubt about it. And I wanted to do general surgery because in the same day, I would be removing a thyroid. Then after that, I would repair a hernia, or I would remove a part of a colon. So that variety and that exposure, let alone that you need to know all what is about all those systems. So the general surgeon was needed to know all the different systems and part of the body, besides the anatomy and everything else. And that attracted me very much so.
So you were, it sounds to me like you were spending a lot of time at the hospital. Where did you live?
That's another interesting story. When we first came in, we wanted to live, excuse me, next to my cousin. So my wife would have a companion and somebody took. So they lived in Livonia. So we found a place in Wayne and Warren. So I said, how long would it take me to get to the hospital from here? And he said, half an hour. Well, and in Mexico, you drive half an hour when you want to buy chiclets. So it's so congested. So I said, no problem, good. So we rented a furnished apartment, and winter came. So that half an hour became an hour and a half or 2 hours. So I needed to leave my apartment in the morning about 5:30 in order to get to the hospital before 7 to start my day. Snow, cold, the car, we had a little Ford Maverick that we bought in Miami. And it's funny because they said, you want air conditioner? I said, well, how much is it? So no, I couldn't afford the air conditioning on the car. So he said, well, in Mexico, when it's cold, when it's hot, you open the windows. Well, in Miami, you do not open the windows in summertime. So we had the little Maverick, and I did not have a garage or a carport. It was just outside. So many a times it wouldn't start. So what I would do is I would call Marion. Marion would come down. Mind you, this is 5:30 in the morning. And she would crank the ignition while I would pump the gas in the carburetor, and it would flood, and then we go. One of those times, I'm looking in the rear view mirror, and I see that she slips, falls, and hits her head, and he doesn't get up. So I went back, and of course it was a mild concussion, thank God everything was good, but I said, this cannot be. So the Sinai apartments were there, right next to the hospital, and the resident in charge of the apartments was my chief resident in surgery. So I went to him and I said, Keith, I need this. It's taking me a long time and it's dangerous. He said, there's a long waiting list. It might be a few months before you get it. Okay, there's nothing I could do. A few weeks later, he mentioned that he loves Mexican food. His wife, who was a resident in psychiatry, was away in a conference. So bless you, thank you. We invited him for dinner without any, and Marion cooked the delicious Mexican food. So it happened that day, there were like 4 or 6 inches of snow. So it took him a long time to come to my house, longer to go back to the hospital. Within a month, we had an apartment there. and that was, provincial. That was not planned, or it just happened.
What were the apartments like?
The apartment were, for us, a godsend. There were 2 bedrooms. You had a kitchen, a dining room, 2 bathrooms. Very, very reasonable rent. They would pay the utilities, and they would deduct that rent from our paycheck, which was fantastic. At that time, I think we were making about $5,000 a year, something like that. But that was the time. So besides that proximity gave me more time to be with my family. And we developed friendships that are still ongoing today. Many a times, Marion says, if we're not for those friendships we developed, we probably would not be here.
That's interesting.
But those friends are from 50 some years.
Yeah, plus the fact that you got another hour's sleep at least in the morning.
Sometimes, yes, correct. No, but so it was every Friday the family could come to dinner at the hospital. So everybody would get dressed up and would come to all the families there with all the kids. It was very special.
Did you find, I've asked this question before, but I'll ask you too. Obviously, the Jewish doctors, there was an immediate camaraderie. What about the non-Jewish doctors that were there? How did they fit into the dynamic of the hospital?
There was no distinction. They would go along and they have their own criteria, their own way of doing things. They were just part of the team. There was really didn't feel different at all.
Did you ever think about going to another hospital in your time at Sinai?
Never. Did not. I was so involved and so grateful to be there that, no, never. When I thought something like in that line was after close to finishing the residency to see if I would do a fellowship in something else. But I knew I wanted to do general surgery.
How did the hospital change, in your opinion, from the time you started working there until the end, in terms of its evolution and the quality of care, medical innovation, et cetera, et cetera? I'm curious what you think.
Yeah. When it took me probably a couple of years or so to appreciate what the hospital has to offer and was offering me and everybody else. The quality of care, the compassion, the knowledge, the talent that was there. But as we neared I would say, the end period, where Jewish patients started to migrate, excuse me, to other hospitals in the suburbs, we started to decline in revenue. And that was there was a shadow that was growing, and was sad, but the quality of care did not suffer. The quality of care was maintained to the highest standard, and it was a sad time. It was a worrisome time. At that time, I was chair of the Department of Surgery for several years already, and it created a very bad feeling and concern and sadness about what was going to happen to the hospital.
Could you sense it? I mean, was it something? Or
Definitely. We had all the chairs had a meeting every week, and when we started talking about selling or affiliating, the viable alternatives at that time were not good. So we were very much opposed to that. And in spite of that, the board persisted, and it happened. Something interesting is at that time, I had the opportunity to operate on Max Fisher, which were in his building. And Max was, I don't have to tell you, so influential on the direction of the hospital. So I had the opportunity to discuss this once in a house call that I made to see him. And I expressed exactly the feeling of the doctors. And my feeling and the doctor's feeling was, they are going to destroy Sinai. They're not going to preserve the Jewish values. And all the talent that we have is going to disperse. And there wasn't much at the time that he could do. And it happened. And the prediction came through. After that, they made a big mistake of they had Sinai Hospital and they had New Grace Hospital within a mile of each other. They had to close one and keep the other one viable. Well, they made the wrong choice. They closed Sinai. They moved to Sinai Grace. And that's why it's called Sinai Grace. Otherwise, it would have been Grace Sinai in the Sinai building. But I went there as chief of surgery as well. The atmosphere was different. The work ethic was different. I tried very hard to have the same standard that we had at Sinai. Impossible. So that's when I left.
Why was it impossible?
Again, they were inherited bad habits in that hospital that were impossible to change. The the medical staff, as predicted, from Sinai, went to Providence, to Beaumont, to University of Michigan, and did not go to that new hospital. So all the investment that they made, hopefully keeping the doctors, keeping the patients, did not pay off.
Were the demographics of what was happening in the neighborhood, in terms of the changing of the population, did that have impact on the decision to sunset Sinai too?
Well, yeah, because that...
I mean, the Jewish community was not coming back.
Not coming back, moving to the suburbs. And that contributed to the economic failure or decrease economic power of Sinai.
They talked about maybe putting another hospital out in West Bloomfield. Didn't work. In your opinion, was that the right decision not to build out there?
Well, no, it was looking backwards, it was the wrong decision. We would have been where Ford Hospital is in West Bloomfield,
right,
and it would have saved the medical staff, the quality, the values, all that, and it didn't happen.
Talk to me a little bit about the town and gown conflict that happened. And other doctors have said that was also a precipitating reason why the hospital took a turn downward. But I'm interested in your opinion on that too, Doctor.
Yeah, I don't feel it. I don't feel that the town and gown was a big problem within Sinai. The main problem was several programs were affiliated with Wayne State University, and they would send students in rotations. The students would like Sinai so much that they would want to stay there and take more rotations. So they stopped sending students to Sinai. That was the main town and gown conflict. Within Sinai, we had part-time people working for the hospital, full-time people working for the hospital. When I became chair of surgery, I was part administration, in part I had my private practice and my surgeries. So, and that was not a problem at all. So within the hospital, the full-time people and the volunteer people, there was minimal conflict, or I would not say that was one of the reasons that Sinai declined. I think it was the lack of the migration of patients towards the suburbs.
So it was economics.
Yes.
Yeah. What was your favorite part of working at Sinai? What was your most favorite thing? And your least favorite thing too?
All of it was my favorite thing. I look back at it, and it gave me the tools to be able to stand in any medical milieu in the world, in the country, and stand my own and hold my own. There were times that, yes, you were exhausted or something sad happened that you don't want to happen, but there was nothing that I would say, oh, I wouldn't do that. I would not go back there. Nothing.
Was the quality of the care there ever diminished because of the potential sale and the separation of these medical staff to other hospitals and fewer patients coming in? Or did the medical standards stay very high?
Stayed high. I don't ever think that medical care was compromised by that. No.
How'd you feel about when you heard that Sinai was being sold?
It's a stab in the heart.
How's it feel now?
The same.
Yeah.
The same. It doesn't go away, and that's why we're doing this.
Right.
To maintain that feeling, that comforting, that atmosphere that was unique to Sinai.
Sinai was sold, obviously, for, I think, more than anyone expected that it would be sold for.
Yep.
And it seems to be doing some good things in the community with the dollars that are being generated. How do you feel about that?
About that, we feel very good, and that was a redeeming factor in the losing Sinai. From that money, we created the Jewish Fund.
Right.
And all of us that were in the board became board members of the Jewish Fund. And as everybody knows, the fund has done wonderful things, sponsored enormous programs, and done very good.
Now you're part of those decision-making processes, aren't you?
I was at that time in the Jewish board, and now I am at the board of Sinai Foundation.
Uh-huh. What are some of the things that excite you most about how the money is being spent?
The good that it does. Not all the programs we invest are, turn out the way we want it, but we are very selective in picking and giving the money to where we think we're going to get the big, most for the buck.
Mm-hmm. And there are non-Jewish things that are being supported as well.
Absolutely. It's all community benefit geared.
What was the atmosphere like at the hospital when the negotiations were going on?
Very contentious. Again, very worrisome, very sad, and we all tried to voice our opinion, and ultimately was the board's decision.
What did you do when the hospital was sold? Where'd you go?
I took my practice. I went to Beaumont, Royal Oak. And it was not the same thing. It was not the same atmosphere. It was a wonderful hospital, almost a university hospital with many subspecialties in surgery. Eventually had their own medical school. So we had residents and interns. The academic level was very high, and the medical care was excellent, but did not have that feeling of home that Sinai had.
You think there'll ever come a time where there will be something that has that feeling?
I see it difficult, the way medicine is going nowadays.
Big business. Yeah.
It's all the bottom line. It's investment by groups of non-doctors. And I see it, unfortunately. My colleagues that are still working are very unhappy, looking for a way out. and it's going downhill. And unfortunately, has hurt medical care.
Do you think-
Patient care, no question, was hurt.
Who are some of the people that were most influential in your career as you were coming up through the ranks?
There was one particular surgeon, Paul Neufeld. He was my inspiration. Gentle, great surgeon, great technician. He was a mensch.
And a good doctor.
Excellent. So that was my hero.
Anyone else?
There were several others that.
But
had
he
to
was
offer.
the one.
He was the strong.
Tell me a little bit about your family.
My family, thank God, my immediate family is my wife of 55 years, which without her, I just could not have done a tenth of what was able to achieve. We have 3 children, 2 boys, 1 girl. The oldest one has 5 children.
Wow.
The second boy has 2, and my girl has 2. So,
Do they live here?
They all live here. They lived at one time outside. They explored New York, California, blah, blah. But when it came time to family and kids, they came back. So we are so blessed. We have them here. They live within 10 minutes of my house. We are very involved in their lives, and it's a blessing every day.
We'll talk about that later because we have similar paths.
Sure.
So you're happy with the Sinai Medical Foundation? You think it's doing the things that it's supposed to be doing? Has it exceeded your expectation?
It's always a work in progress. The fact that it stayed here for so many years and still doing good work is a testament to the validity of its existence. So yes, I'm very happy with it, and we're always striving to do the best we can for the community and for medicine and doctors.
Can't do more than that.
Correct.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to say while we're on the camera?
Just that I'm very grateful that we're doing this program. I thank you. I thank Dr. Blau. And this is going to be for posterity. And we're trying to maintain that Sinai feeling throughout.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much for your time and the wonderful comments.
Thank you.